Hey everyone, welcome back to BrowncoatNerd. Real quick, I want to remind you all to go check out my Instagram as well as my Rumble page. And now today we're going to be doing just a quick comparison of the Cz82 along with the Cz83. Now I know a lot of other YouTubers have already done this comparison, but I had two of these, so I might as well do the same thing. So essentially what we have is the exact same gun. So they came out of Czechoslovakia. They are a direct blowback firearm. The 82 is chambered in 9x18 Makarov, whereas the 83 was chambered in 9x18 Makarov, 380 ACP, as well as 32 ACP. Now, according to my book, let me get it out here, Cold War Pistols of Czechoslovakia by James D. Brown. This is a great source if you're interested in the Cz80 series or the 75 or really any older surplus Cz. It's a good source of information. But according to that book, the number of production, Cz82 had over 153,000 made for the military and some police units. The 83 had over 100, or not over, the exact number it gave, was 100,247. And those were mostly made for the commercial market. However, some were used by the police in Czechoslovakia and outside of Czechoslovakia. So some of the comparisons here. First off, like I said, the 82 only comes chambered in 9x18 Makarov, whereas the 83 you do have some options. You have 9x18 Makarov, 380 ACP, which is the most common caliber you will find it in, as well as 32 ACP. Now, real quick, obviously these grips are not original on the CZ. They would both come with these basic plastic grips. The finish on these is different. The 82 would always have this kind of very rough, kind of painted on enamel type black finish that never really holds up too well. Pretty common to see them chipped like this, quite often way worse. You can still find better, more pristine versions than this. They are out there, but this is pretty much your standard gray that you can expect. Whereas the 83 will typically come in a blued finish, which once again for CZ isn't the best bluing. They tend to be kind of worn. Apparently a few of them did have this painted on black enamel finish, but those are not very common at all. And then we do have some with this satin finish, and sometimes you'll see this with a black frame and a satin slide. So they would also come out in kind of a two-tone type finish. And the roll marks would change throughout the years of production. So not going to jump into that. And then we have other little changes like some of the roll pin sizes, lanyard loops. The style of that would change. I do have a video on the 82, which is actually an X grade from AIM Surplus. I got a really good deal on this. And on that video, I do kind of dive into the deeper history of a lot of the small changes. I'm not going to get super detailed, just kind of going to go over the Cliff Note versions of this, if you will. So you got the difference in the finish. This, I might as well mention, like I said earlier, I did get this from AIM Surplus. I got a killer deal on this. This was listed as an X grade. I wanted to add an 82. I've had this 83 for years, but I did want to add an 82 to the collection, and they were offering the X grades for $280. This was in 2023, so I decided to roll the dice, and honestly, I do not know why it was considered an X grade. Like I said, this wear on the finish is pretty standard for an 82. The mag release is a little stiff, but yeah, so I don't know if this was something that was sent out and a customer rejected it for whatever reason, so it just got thrown into the X grade batch. Their standard 82s that they were selling at the time were an extra $100 than what the X grade was. So those were going for $380 compared to $280. So I feel like I got a really killer deal. The 83 I picked up in 2017 for $340. I'm not going to really kind of go over what's fair in the price because the prices of these is constantly changing. At times I'll see the 83 going for more than the 82, and then at times I'll see the 82 going for more than the 83. So it changes quite a bit. but just kind of give you a reference. That's what I paid for them, and that's when I got them. The main difference in these, other than ammo options and finish, will be the barrels. The 82 came with a polygonal or polygonal, I always get those two confused, Glock style barrel rifling. This was actually the first mass-produced handgun to feature that rifling. And that's kind of the big notoriety thing about the 82s. Whereas the 83s get your standard land and groove rifling on them. I have seen some people say that some of the 83s that were chambered in 9x18 did get the polygonal rifling, but not all of them. I don't know how true that is. So if you get an 83 that's chambered in 9x18 Makarov, I would just assume it's going to have your traditional land and groove rifling. Both of them are cold hammer forged barrels. CZ's known for making good barrels. So either way you go, they're going to be pretty good barrels. I did take these out to the range and shoot them side by side to see if one was more accurate than the other. Obviously, I couldn't get the exact same ammunition for both of them. I meant to grab the boxes again, but I had the Polish, I think it's Mesko 9x18 Makarov that's been really quite popular lately. I come across that stuff a lot at a very good price. It's brass case ammo. I looked on the box. It does not say what grain weight it is on the box. It's just a plain white box. And then the ammo I used for this was, what is it, the Mexican manufacturer? Aguila. And I shot all of the stuff. No, I didn't. It was this stuff right here. So 95 grain. Once again, the 9x18 ammo, the Makarov ammo, I have no clue what the grain weight was. It did not say on the box, but if you know what the Polish Mesko grain weight ammo is, there you go. That's what it was. So I did do a side-by-side comparison. I feel bad because whenever I do side-by-side comparisons on accuracy, I feel like I'm always reporting back to you guys with, oh, they were essentially the same. Maybe I'm just not that good of a shot. But in this case, once again, they were essentially the same. Now, I will say I feel like I was getting slightly tighter groups with the 83. That could be the gun, and it also could be the ammunition difference. So I'm not really sure on that. But I would just go ahead and say they're both pretty darn accurate guns. The magazines on these, for the 9x18 Makarov as well as the 380, they actually use the same magazine. You're going to get 12 plus 1 rounds. With the 380, the owner's manual does list the 83 as being 12 plus 1, but since it's a slightly smaller diameter than the 9x18 Makarov, you actually can fit a 13th round in the magazine. And once again, I've done this in the past, but when I did the comparison with these, I did that again just to see if I could ever get a jam up with loading an extra round, and I've never had an issue with either one of these guns. And so loading this to 13 rounds, I did not have an issue. If you're going to use the 83 in a like home defense or self-defense situation, if that's what you're using it for, just to be safe, I would probably just load it to 12 rounds just to be on the safe side. It's only one extra round. You don't want to have a jam up because of that. But I've never had an issue with loading that to 13 rounds. And then the 32 ACP, I want to say it's 15 rounds on the mag. I'm not positive on that. And obviously that does use a different magazine. I have seen some people modify the 9x18/380 mags to work for the 32 round. But those mags are a little bit harder to come by. The guns themselves are essentially the same. Now, typically, your 83 will not have a lanyard loop. And your 82 always will, or at least it came out of the factory with a lanyard loop, and there were two different styles. I go into that in the video for the 82. I have seen a few images of the 83 with a lanyard loop on them. So I do not know if that's a situation where someone was replacing the mainspring cap here, or whatever you want to call that, and the one that they found was for an 82, therefore it ended up getting a lanyard loop. So I'm not sure if some of the 83s did come with a lanyard loop. It might have been something replaced by the owner afterwards, or if they did come out of the factory with a lanyard loop, it was not that many at all, because the overwhelming majority of the 83s that I see do not have that lanyard loop. And of course, if you've got an 82 and you don't want that lanyard loop, you can get the mainspring cap off of an 83, and that will work just fine on your 82. The sights are essentially the same. We've got two dots in the back and a painted ramp on the front for the Cz82. The earlier 83s had the same sight setup. However, at some point in time, you can see they got rid of that ramp and just put a blade on there that has a traditional dot. And that is, or at least was, painted white. The paint's kind of hard to see, especially on that satin finish front sight post. And then the rear sights are still the same. Now, some of these satin finish guns I have seen with satin colored rear sights. Some of them I have seen with black front sight blades. I know importation laws, a lot of times are required to put quote-unquote target sights on the guns, and then they'll typically put the original sights back on them once they're in the U.S. So I don't know if this having a black rear sight and a satin finished front sight was a side effect of that, and if it just ended up getting a black rear sight instead of the original rear sight put on there, or if this is just something they did from the factory. I feel like the few that I've seen with a black front sight post always had a black rear sight. However, as you can see on this one, it is a silver front sight post with the black rear sights. And obviously, if you get one of the ones that are blued, they're going to be black sights, or at least should have been black sights. Like I said, accuracy pretty much the same on these. I was ever so slightly more accurate with the 83. That could have been ammo. So there's really, well, there are some advantages and disadvantages amongst the two, I guess. So if you decided that you want to get one of these, go ahead and comment why not both in the comments right now. I mean, that is what I did. But if you need to decide between one or the other, the 82 is cool because that one is guaranteed to have been military or police surplus. This one I actually believe was police surplus. I go into that in the video for this specific gun. If you get an 83, it could have been one that was just made for the commercial market, or one that was used by a police force somewhere in Europe or Africa. No really guaranteed way to know if your 83 was actually a surplus handgun or if it was one built for the commercial market. Real quick before I forget, another change they did only on the 83, and that was towards the end of production of the 83. These did eventually get a squared off front trigger guard, which is rather interesting because in the very early prototype versions of the 82, they actually did feature that squared off trigger guard. They originally were making the 82 for the police. It was going to be in 32 ACP. But then the military caught wind and they're like, hey, we need a 9x18 chambered handgun. Can you make the 80, or I don't know if I had a model name at the time, but can you make this gun work for a 9x18 Makarov? And so then this took This took over the production, and then the commercial market was kind of secondary for the commercial and police. And so a lot of the police did get the 9x18 Makarov, and of course all of the military got the 9x18 Makarov as well. And in the process, it lost that squared off trigger guard. I don't know if that was something the military specifically did not want for some reason. I have a feeling it was some kind of a cost-cutting measure. They also did originally actually have a decocker on the prototype versions. I know they did have lots of issues with that, and eventually that was dropped as well. And it got just the safety only, which is safety with the hammerback, and that is ambidextrous on both of these. You cannot put the safety on when the hammer is down. So you will find some 83s with a squared off trigger guard. That was never a feature on the production 82s. Most of the 83s have the traditional rounded trigger guard. So if you're trying to decide between getting one or the other, the 82's got the cool factor, like I said, it's guaranteed surplus. 83, it might have been surplus. To me, that's always kind of a beneficial factor in purchasing a gun. To me, it's just cool that it has that history. And also typically the resale value tends to kind of maintain on one that is guaranteed to be military or police surplus. Not so much so when it's commercial. Of course, these are not made anymore. So you're not going to get a huge depreciation in value. And I believe the value is going to continue to go up, even on the 83 since they're no longer made. But I feel like the 82 is going to kind of hold that a little bit better, at least over time. Now, the 82 does have that kind of crappier finish, whereas the 83, you'd get it blued. And like I said, the bluing wasn't the best. You can find pristine copies of both of these. But to me, the bluing, even when it's worn, looks a lot better than kind of this enamel painted finish that's chipped. So I feel like the blue ones just age better. And then, of course, you do have the options of getting some of the ones with this kind of satin finish. And I have seen a few that are almost like a very light bronze finish. I don't know if that was one that was supposed to get satin finish and like something in the process got messed up, or if that was the specific color of finish they were going for. I've seen a few of those years ago when I got this from Classic Firearms. They put out a video and they had a few of those kind of bronzed finish colors. It's a real light bronze. So those might have supposed to have been satin finish ones, but just came out with that color. Those aren't very common. You will typically see them either blued or with a satin finish for the 83s. So the 83s do have a little bit better finish, or at the very least wears better, doesn't look as ugly once it gets worn. So you have that benefit. If you want that squared trigger guard, some of the 83s do have that. They're not the most common, but they are out there, kind of making it a little bit more modern. Both of these guns are fairly modern for coming out of a comm block country during the Soviet Union. Now, 82 and 83, I'm pretty sure you can figure out what years these were put into production. So these were pretty late in the Cold War era. And I think probably the last firearm designed to use the 9x18 Makarov. I very well could be wrong on that, but if it's not the last, it's one of the very last. So the finish is much better on the 83. Cool factor, the 82 kind of wins out a little bit. Now the last thing is going to be ammo availability. Of course, you can always get 9x18 Makarov ammo online, or I believe at least most places. There might be some states that do restrict that. I think that might be the case, unfortunately. Luckily, I don't live in a state that's like that for now. Who knows what the future will bring. You might have a gun shop right down the road that always has 9x18 Makarov in stock, so it's not much of an issue. 380, you can always find that at gun shops. You're always going to be able to find it online. Now, 9x18 Makarov, you can get it as a full metal jacket. They do make hollow point offerings. I've even come across and had a box of Hornady 9x18 Makarov self-defense loads. I don't know how often they make that, but it is, or at least was, out there. However, with the 380 round, you've got a much wider spectrum of different kinds of loadings and bullets you can get with that ammo, from full metal jacket to hollow points. So you have a much wider variety when it comes to choice of ammo with the 83, at least if it's chambered in 380, as well as just general availability with most places. So if you want to get one or the other and you don't really care about the provenance of the gun, whether it's surplus or not, I would definitely say go for the 83 and get it chambered in 380. 380 is really close ballistically to 9x18 Makarov anyways, so you're still going to get the feel of having one in 9x18 Makarov. Now, if you want to get one in 32 ACP, I know I do, because I think it's just really cool to have a high-capacity 32. A little bit different there. 32 you can still find. Sometimes it's almost as hard as finding 9x18 Makarov. The variety of 32 you're going to find out there is a variety, but it's definitely not as wide as 380, and it does tend to be a little more expensive. So keep that in mind if you want to get the 32 ACP version, which once again I still think is freaking cool. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. Just wanted to bring you this quick comparison, point out the minor differences with some of the front sight posts on the 83, some of the front trigger guards, and the finish options between the two, as well as just kind of taking into consideration, if you want to get one of these, how easy do you want to be able to find ammo, as well as the variety of said ammo. So that is it. That's all I've got for you guys. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And of course, as always, stay safe and stay shiny.